Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to the hottest show on radio, broadcasting live from 27 Boxes in Melville. It's Warren and Manny, Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio. And shout out to my co-host, Uncle Manny, who's not with me today. Your presence is greatly missed, boss. I want to send a shout out to a very good friend of mine who I saw this weekend at the center, Ross, and I want to give you a big thumbs up, brother. You're doing well. And then a good morning and good welcome to all our faithful listeners who tune in every week. We're doing a show today, and the title of the show is From Dope to Hope. I've got a friend and a guest in studio who has a lot of experience with dope, being marijuana, dacha, cannabis, weed. It was his drug of choice, a drug which led him down the road of addiction. And today, we sit with Declan, who's 2 years clean. Declan, welcome to the show.
Afternoon, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Every Monday I say good morning, and I realize that we go on air at the beginning of the afternoon. So good afternoon to you, Declan. And you know, what I want to be talking about today is, as I said earlier, I want to be speaking about dacha. You know, if you take a look back, let's say I smoked my first joint in 2003. And if you look back 15 years when I smoked my first joint, there was a lot of taboo around marijuana. Look, it's always been kind of socially acceptable in certain circles. But as we're progressing in the 21st century, we're starting to see dacha become a lot more sociably acceptable. There's places in the States where it's legal now, where you can actually go into a shop like a bottle store. They have these grow shops where you can go buy your marijuana. The police today are hardly arresting people for possession of marijuana. There's clubs and bars where it's kind of 100% acceptable for people to smoke joints, to have hubblies with their weed in it. And what I want to ask you is dacha, in your opinion, Declan, is it a drug? And is it different? And if so, how is it different from any other drug, such as crack, heroin, crystal meth?
You know, for me, I think weed is a drug. In my experience, I've always thought of the benefits, but I've also had the consequences of using. But for me, I think marijuana is a drug. It has to be a drug. It's been made illegal. But in certain scopes, like you said, socially acceptable to do so. But I don't think it is as widely unaccepted as, let's say, heroin, cat, cocaine, that sort of thing. It's the lesser of the two evils, if we can say that. So for me, marijuana definitely is a drug. But this whole legalization thing about it, I'm not a big fan of, because of the fact is that, in my opinion, I believe it is the gateway drug to other drugs that are around.
Okay, now for you, it was your gateway drug, I'd assume. So we spoke a bit before the show about how dacha was one of your biggest drugs of choice, but there were other drugs as well. Where did the journey with drugs start for you?
My journey started when I was about 13 years old. I got introduced to marijuana for the first time. And, you know, for me, I was introduced to that before I was introduced to alcohol. And that freedom that first joint gave me, and that ability to socialize and be free, so to speak, was amazing. Little did I know that 15 years down the line, I would, develop an addiction towards the substance. And at that time of my life, I really thought it was awesome. You know, I didn't want to have to think about the consequences of using. All I did was using with my friends.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, what was the progression like? What was the next drug you took after dacha?
After that, just shortly after I started using marijuana, it was alcohol,
mm-hmm.
and then it was the two combined, and then I got introduced to prescription medication, painkillers, sleeping tablets as sort of like a maintenance drug for when my high, so to speak, of my marijuana was running low.
So would you say getting high on the prescription medication, and that was, would I say, made easier by the fact that you had already been cultured to smoking dacha, get high, feel good?
Oh, most definitely, because it was giving me the same sort of effect, but it was legal, so to speak, and I found that sort of a crutch. In other words, you know, if my marijuana was running out, it would be the next best thing to go and pop some painkillers, some prescription meds, and, you know, feel that same sort of high without having to, you know, acquire marijuana to get high.
So, in many years of my own experience, look, if I look at my story, the first drug, if I look technically, that I ever used was alcohol, as I spoke about a few weeks ago with Brett on the show. And thereafter I smoked dacha. I was 11 years old. I had a joint and it was great. And I went on and I smoked more weed and more weed and more weed. And as I did that, I started developing this mentality that there are drugs available, that I don't have to deal with my emotions, that I don't have to deal with life when I can't deal with life. And if I look at illegal drugs, it was definitely my gateway to a lot of other drugs. Now, landing up in treatment centers, I went to a lot of treatment centers before I eventually got clean at Breaking the Chains. And in a lot of these treatment centers, in BTC as well, and in all the others I went to, there'd be guys in for heroin. Now, the heroin addict comes in and he detoxes and he goes through a lot of physical pain. But a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, he's cognizant of what's going on around him and he has an understanding of reality. The cocaine addict goes through a depression, but the worst cases of mental psychosis, of psychological damage, which I've witnessed in many years in addiction and treatment and now working in the field of addiction and treatment, and the worst psychoses which I see are people who are purely dacha smokers. They smoke weed and they come into treatment centers, or they, unfortunately, some don't. And we see a lot of them on the streets, homeless people, mental cases, that guy who's running around and talking to himself while scratching in the bin. And what a lot of people don't realize is that this is as a result of smoking dacha. What is the link between dacha, marijuana, and psychosis?
Well, the link, to be honest with you, is the amount and what marijuana you use. So the more potent it is, and if you're also predisposed to the disease of addiction, as well as the fact that you might have a mental disorder, that's where I think the link between marijuana and psychosis is. It triggers something in the prefrontal cortex of your brain.
Okay.
That makes you not being able to distinguish between reality and what's not real. And a lot of people think that, oh no, it won't affect me, whereas if you've got some predisposition to schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, and in my case I was a depressive, and I believe I was pretty close to psychosis myself, but the delusion that is created when you in psychosis is a difficult one to face. I mean, like yourself, I have seen people in marijuana and do psychosis, and trust me, it's the scariest thing when you see that thing in front of you and this person doesn't have any sort of reality about what's going on around them. They're talking to things that aren't there. They're behaving in manners that you would never believe. So for me, I believe it's the active ingredient in marijuana, THC, that triggers something within your brain that allows you to then develop this psychosis, so to speak.
And for yourself, Declan, did you ever experience any, I know from talking to you, you never went into a full psychosis, but did you ever experience any symptoms of delusional thoughts, paranoia? These are often side effects of smoking. Did you have any mental health consequences? What were the consequences of your addiction?
Well, the consequences are I developed depression, very bad paranoia. Also to the degree where I was very untrusting of people around me. I was very isolated. I didn't want to have to deal with the reality of people around me, so I kind of developed my own feeling towards people and the reality that I was based in, and I created my own reality, so to speak. Consequences were depression on the clinical side, which is what led me down the road of the prescription medication. But
and you don't take any prescription medication today?
I'm 100% clean of all mood and mind altering substances.
Well done. I think when you mention depression, that's the first question that comes to mind for me, because there's a lot of treatment centers out there and a lot of people, doctors in the industry, who are just prescribing medication. And at Breaking the Chains, I suppose you're definitely a friend of Breaking the Chains, because we don't believe in prescription medication. We don't believe in taking one drug away and treating the side effects of that drug with another drug, because then we never learn to depend on something greater than ourselves, on a power greater than ourselves, and we never get in touch with that spiritual way of life, which is what it's all about. So at Breaking the Chains as well, guys come in and sure, there's medication if they need to detox, but there's never a culture of putting a person on a drug to overcome a drug. So after the break, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why dagga is becoming more and more sociably acceptable. I want to hear a bit more about your story, and then I want to perhaps touch on, is there really a difference between, a lot of people think weed's a soft drug, between addiction to marijuana and between addiction to other drugs, because ultimately when the drug gets taken away, we're all on a level playing field. Whatever I know, for me as a heroin addict, I know heroin to be the solution to when life gets really ugly and when I'm clean and I don't know how to deal with things. For yourself as a marijuana addict, you know that to be the solution. And being clean when it's not okay, when I'm not okay inside, it doesn't really matter what the drug is, in my opinion. So let's touch a bit on that when we come back. We're going to go to an ad break. You're listening to the hottest show on air, brandlive.co.za, Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio. We will be right back.
Live from 27 Boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.
Whether you're an athlete or just going about your day-to-day business, use Turbo Freeze on the go for any pain relief or inflammation. It's the #1 pain relief formula. To find out more, log on to our website www.turbofreeze.co.za.
Askhulumeni in the Convo Corner.
Check this out.
It's time for the Convo Corner.
And what we have for you is, does the age gap really matter in sexual relationships? Viva Kyolon. Sorry, you look at Zoto Wabantu and, her Ben 10, and you ask yourself so many questions that this old woman dating this
young
baby, and maybe it's, because he's probably mature. Who knows? Now, if you both are on the same level of maturity, like I mentioned, don't let the attached age number cloud your decision. Because here's the thing, it could be the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, but because of
100%.
society and you think
Brandlive.co.za. You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
The unique experience. Living as One Events presents relationship talks, drama, Q&A sessions,
music, love stories, ladies and gents session, and lots more. Registration fee at 150 Rand.
happening at Bread of Life Foundation Venue, Honeydew Shopping Center, Bayers Nadir Drive, corner Blueberry Drive, Unit 66, Laser Park, Honeydew. Saturday, 15 September at 11 a.m. RSVP on 072-851-8702.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
Okay, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Breaking the Chains Recovery Radio. It's Monday afternoon, as Declan so kindly reminded me. And we're sitting here in the studio and we're talking about something which is a big topic of discussion in the media as well. Marijuana, dagga, we're hearing more and more about it. I think we're even seeing a lot more people with marijuana branded shirts these days. And, there's this term 420, which you find all over the place, which I recently learned means that 420 is like cool with smoking weed. Declan, why do you think that society is slowly but surely beginning to make marijuana use more and more sociably acceptable? What do you believe has caused this shift in perception? And what do you believe the consequences of this social acceptability are to our youth out there?
For me, I think what has led to the more social acceptability of the drug is because of all the medical studies that have been done around the health benefits of the drug itself. But they're not looking at the contraindications of that. If you're predisposed to the disease of addiction like I am, taking that one drug, and it could lead to further drug use down the road. And I think it's becoming more socially acceptable because it's seen as a softer drug, so to speak. It's not as hectic as heroin, cocaine, and so on and so forth. It's herbal, and a lot of people will argue that fact. But the simple thing, in my opinion, just ladies and gentlemen, this is my opinion, that marijuana is a dangerous drug. It can cause psychosis if you're predisposed to the disease of addiction. you can become addicted to it, dependent upon it. And it can lead you down the road to harder drug use. And it's very dangerous in the fact that it can cause a whole lot of side effects for you as a human being. Loss of brain cells, that sort of thing. But for me, when society starts putting this label on it being more acceptable, so to speak, it's seen as a lesser of two evils, like I've spoken about before, where people are now using it for medical reasons, or they're using it for a stress reliever or something along those lines. So for society to see it more as a socially acceptable drug, I can see why. But if you understand the underlying meaning behind why it is a drug, it's not called a drug for no reason. It's illegal, and in my opinion, it should stay illegal because it can lead you to further drug use down the line.
And something which you said, Declan, is the lesser of two evils. Now, when we go into our 12-step fellowships, and a lot of people have this thing called junkie pride, that they believe, I was a crack addict and I lived on the streets of Hillbrow and I slept on the streets and I sold my car and I lost my wife and I blew R1 million in a month, and I'm somehow more worthy of recovery and I'm somehow more of an addict than you. And there's this junkie pride which stops people from being able to identify, and it's only when we're able to identify. My sponsor always says to me, we need to connect to our fellows, we need to connect to our fellowship, and we need to connect to ourselves, and then only do we connect to God ultimately. Now, with this junkie pride, a lot of people are struggling to connect to one another, because even another heroin addict such as me, there's elements of my story which may be a lot worse than theirs, and there's elements of their story that may be societally worse than mine, on an outside point of view looking in. What difficulties do you think, and have you experienced, people who smoke marijuana as their drug of choice, what difficulties and marginalization have you seen them experience within recovery centers, within 12-step fellowships, and in your opinion, as we touched on earlier, ultimately the problem stops when we get clean. The problem starts because I don't know how to deal with life without my drug. What have you experienced in terms of marginalization of dagga smokers, of marijuana addicts as a drug of choice coming into treatment and 12-step fellowships?
I think a lot of the marginalization comes from us dagga addicts ourselves, because we somehow think that our use or the drug we used is a lot less harmful or a lot less dangerous than the heroin, the crack, the cocaine. So I think the marginalization comes from us, to be honest with you. And in my opinion, I believe that all of our stories are the same. The pain is the same, but the drugs and the elements of the stories are different. So for me, when I came into the rooms or into treatment in early 2016, I was struggling to identify with the other people. And until I had somebody tell my story to me, to have my understanding of the pain, the anguish, the isolation, the paranoia, all of those elements that are involved in most addicts' lives is, I thought to myself, I'm different. But in actual fact, I'm no different to a heroin addict, to a cocaine addict, to a tick addict. I really am not. So I don't believe there's much marginalization. Obviously, you're going to get people in the rooms that are going to say, oh no, he was a pothead, he's not as bad as me. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you look at the drug of choice is actually irrelevant. It's the actual feeling of the pain that we go through as addicts. That is what matters to me. And I believe in the fellowship, there are a lot of people that, whether you're a heroin addict, a coke addict, a pothead, it doesn't matter. They accept you for who you are. And I've seen a lot of love in the rooms due to that. I haven't seen a lot of people just say, oh, no, you're not as bad, you don't belong here. I believe that anybody can become addicted and that you can go through those elements and still be in recovery. My thing is the quality of the program that you're working.
And what have the determining factors been for you, Declan, on the quality of the program? We were speaking a bit earlier, me and Declan, outside, and we touched a bit on service. And one of the beauty parts about breaking the chains and what we do is we encourage the guys to start helping one another. And we encourage them to do that from when they've been at the center for 2 weeks. So there's 2 weeks of what we call grace, where the guys get given an opportunity to settle in, detox, orient themselves to this new way of life. And then we start encouraging the guys to help themselves and to help themselves and do so through helping others.
Correct, yes.
And that's like really what we focus on. And I really like that we spoke about it outside and touched on it earlier. So, at Breaking the Chains, we have probably one of the best success rates in the country. And in my personal opinion, I think a lot of that is hinged on the fact that people are encouraged to do service. They leave the center and they get given tasks such as, you've got a car, bring this person through to meetings. You have connections there at this particular venue where you can go start meetings, go start up a meeting, carry that message back into your community. What are some of the key cornerstones to your recovery, Ben Declan?
First and foremost, I have to say my connection with my higher power.
Mm-hmm.
That was the foundation of all my beginnings in recovery, was having a power greater than myself and handing my will and my life over to that person or that being, so to speak. Big one, like you've touched on, is service. I do a lot of service in the fellowship, and I believe in giving back. So what freely was given to me. Helping the still suffering addict or alcoholic is where it's at for me. Also, having my meetings in place, doing service at those meetings, and as you know, and we spoke about it earlier, I'm really big on the element of service. I can only owe my recovery to that, because when I do service, it humbles me. It gives me an element of gratitude. It shows me that I'm helping another person irrespective of what I get in return. Doing service for the still suffering addict and just seeing that person's eyes light up when they come to a meeting and they see you and you smile and they're like, thank you, Declan. I appreciate what you've done for me. And it's like, it's not for me, dude. It really is. It's all for you. And service for me is paramount. I mean, you've got your other pillars such as step work. You've got, I've drawn a bit of a blank on the 5 pillars, but
Sponsor.
Yes, that's a big one for me as well. I mean,
big shout out to my sponsor, Uncle Manny. Missing you, boss.
Shout out to my sponsor as well. Without that guy, I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys here this evening. So for me, I've got through so much of strife in my recovery so far, thanks to having a good sponsor and sponsoring other fellows in the program. So for me, I tell my guys, give back no matter what. Get you out of your own head and help others.
No, 100%. Declan, thank you. It's been most informative chatting to you, and I just want to know from you a short message out there. Every week I wonder, are there still suffering addicts out there who listen? This week we're speaking about marijuana. I know there's someone out there who's listening to you speak and who's identifying with your story. What is your message of hope? And while you're at it, any shout-outs from your side to family, friends, loved ones, or brothers in recovery?
My message of hope to the still suffering addict is, hold on, pain ends.
HOPE.
HOPE.
Awesome.
The way. Hold on, pain ends. Because as soon as you admit that you have a problem and you definitely want help, there are the rooms. You come into the rooms and you just speak, open up, be there, and give back to the other fellows. I want to send a shout out to my parents. Thank you for all the support and love that you've given me over these past 2.5 years. My girlfriend, baby, I love you a lot. To my sponsor, thanks, Richie B, you are the man. And to all my brothers in recovery, the guys that I sponsor, the people I do service with, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you, Warren, for having me on the show.
It's been a pleasure from our side.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, so 20th of October, there's a really cool event coming up. It's going to be the Breaking the Chains annual fundraiser. We got a dinner, we got a dance. The theme is black or white. And tickets are now on sale. If you'd like to purchase a ticket, it's 400 Rand per ticket. And that's a ticket for 2 people. Declan said he's taking a ticket. Declan's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Of course, our great friend and my great friend and co-host Uncle Manny's going to be there, as well as some really cool celebrities who we'll mention a bit later on the next show or two, who are going to be emceeing and DJing at the event. My number is 066 401 4074. Give me a call if you're interested in taking a ticket. Drop me a WhatsApp. I've got a shout out to my brother Zach Anthony. Zach is going to be 20 months clean on Friday the 24th. So to you, brother, BTC soldier, a lot of respect. Thank you for everything you've done for me in my recovery, and keep carrying the message of recovery out there. to the smallest BTC soldier with the biggest spirit, a young man by the name of Fahim. Fahim, 18 months coming up this week. Well done to you, boss. And then, as usual, shout out to my awesome sponsor, Uncle Manny, and shout out to Breaking the Chains, the center which saved my life. Shout out to the moms, shout out to all my friends, and a special shout out to you if you're out there listening. You've identified and you need help. You've got my number. We are here. We can help you. Breaking the Chains is all about hope. You can also give Manny a call and speak to him. Manny's number is 083-991-5600. So call in and know that you can go from dope to hope.
God bless you all.
That's us.
Thank you.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za. Brandlive.co.za